My guest today is Marseta Dill, the Deputy Chief Data Officer at the Federal Aviation Administration. Marseta, thanks so much for taking the time.
No problem, Jason.
Today, we're talking about data. The FAA is awash in data. It comes from handling more than 45,000 flights a day. It comes from other sources like drones and unpiloted vehicles. And it comes from other areas like the National Airspace System. The administration, the FAA, predicts the number of passenger flights will increase by 4.7% annually over the next 2 decades. And with that comes all that data that you get to manage, that you get to try to deal with. I know you all have a clearinghouse for publicly available data. And I looked on data.gov this morning, over 3,600 data sets on data.gov. And that doesn't count all that internal data that I'm sure you collect and help manage and share with employees to help make decisions. So let's talk right there. Let's start with the data strategy. How are you dealing with all these challenges that comes with data?
I mean, for us, data is an integral part to delivering on our mission. So, our data strategy is rooted in ensuring that we're leveraging data, as an enterprise access, that we're using it to drive insights, impact, and innovation. And to do that, we have to align our people, our processes, and our tools to ensure that that data is discoverable, understandable, secure, and trustworthy.
You hit a couple of really important things here. First of all, obviously rooted in ensuring you're leveraging it to drive mission decisions, impact, insights, innovation. How are you going through that process today? What are some of those projects? Everyone has a data lake or a data ocean. What are some of the things you're doing to drive those keywords you mentioned?
So within the Chief Data Office, we manage a couple of data platforms. So they're based in the cloud. Some are Oracle based, but the goal there is that we want to provide IT as a shared service. So we've been focused on improving access to data by onboarding those high value data assets onto enterprise repositories, so that when our analytical community has needs, they can work closely with the CDO office to gain access to data. And where the benefits come is that when you mentioned at the start of the interview, the number of data assets that are available on FAA.gov, plus all our internal assets, it gives us an opportunity to deal with the data sharing part versus having the data stewards engage directly with a number of folks across the agency looking for access to data. So you can gain a lot of efficiencies that way.
I could only imagine if we talk about where the government has gone, both the FAA and I think across a lot of agencies over the last 3, 5, 7 years, where everything was the old silos, right? Well,
Yep.
This program office had their data and that program office had their data. And sometimes they talked if the two people knew each other and became friends or they didn't talk. Having that CDO position and that data strategy is really kind of changing the tone. How big of a change have you seen? Let's start there over the last few years about that data sharing instead of, again, I own the data, but I'm putting it in the central repository to create that enterprise view or sharing a capability.
Yeah, so we have we put a lot of emphasis on establishing data governance communities. So these are cross-organizational groups that are composed of not only data stewards, but data users. And we've been able to leverage those communities to have conversations around what data is being leveraged and ensuring that that data is cataloged so that more people can be aware of the data that's out there. With our data governance center, we've been able to automate a lot of the access to data assets. So I mentioned before those efficiencies that are gained, we can provide that service through our data governance center. So, I think overall the feedback that we're hearing is that access to data is definitely improving, and folks can now, spend more of their time doing that integrated analysis where they're looking at, multiple data sets, providing that holistic picture on our aircraft or our facilities to be able to do that kind of analysis.
I definitely want to talk about that analysis piece. I think that's the other leg in this stool when we talk about data. It's the data itself, it's the tools, and then obviously the people. One last thing around that governance center, and you talked about improving sharing. What are those next steps when you look into 2024 and beyond? What are some of those areas that you are saying with the folks in the CDO office? Hey, here's where we want to go next. Here's how we can continue to make data sharing better, faster, cheaper. You picked the term.
The term I've been using is operationalizing data governance. Like most agencies, we've been undergoing an effort to continuously catalog assets. And, what we hope to do is to make that process more self-service. So lessening the process where they have to directly engage with the individual or person to register the asset, but how can we leverage forms and automated processes to be able to basically mass register data assets?
And that's really talking about this idea that when airline X submits forms, somebody right now, they may submit them electronically, but somebody has to maybe look at them or even manually insert them in some way, or look at that electronic form and then put them in the right spot. That's almost like add some automation, some orchestration. We talk all about that in cybersecurity, but that matters in data too. Is that the type of thing you're talking about, or am I trying to overthink this?
Well, think about it as data about the data. So your typical data catalog will likely contain a description, the format of data, who's the data steward, how is the data stored. So those kinds of things, we want data stewards to be able to provide that information, and for us to be able to automatically ingest that either through information that they're providing or our ability to connect to their database and to pull that information. So that's kind of more along the lines of what we're thinking about.
It sounds to me, and I know this term gets overused, the metadata, the kind of the taxonomy around what the data that's coming in, and make sure we understand it, and folks can, okay, I need this type of data, and here's the next level down. You mentioned this other side of it, which is the process, the analytics side, because you mentioned the goal here is to make it more self-service, so folks can kind of focus on doing the analysis, not trying to find the data. Let's talk a little bit about analysis. It's a big area. What are some of those tools that the FAA has today, and where do you hope they can go in the future?
So we serve a number of data personas: business analysts, data analysts, data scientists, data engineers. So when we think about our ecosystem of tools, we have to keep our users in mind. So in addition to our data platforms and our data governance center, we also have tools to support that data prep. So we have a number, for example, of Tableau users. It has its own prep tool. We're also leveraging Alteryx, which can automate a lot of those functions and has drag and drop capabilities. And we also have a number of tools related to analysis and visualization. So Power BI, GIS tools. And then you have that advanced analytics community who may be interested in more sophisticated tools, or maybe doing using programming to do their data prep. So, we have Jupyter Lab, we have Posit. So, as you can see, we have a wide variety in terms of our audience. And so our challenge is to make sure that we're understanding the needs of our data community, and we look to provide those enterprise tools so that they can focus on the analysis and working with the data.
You mentioned a lot of tools. There's also that feeling, oh my God, there's too many tools, right? Is that a concern you have, or do you feel like you're at a good point now where you have the right balance?
I would say I don't necessarily think about it from the perspective of too many tools. I mean, I think we want to make sure that the tools that we're acquiring serve a business need. We spend time to make sure that as we think about, we call them products. So our product roadmaps, we engage with our user community on the enhancements that we're making, on tools that are needed and necessary, for our workforce to make better use of the data. So I think as long as you're engaging with your workforce about what those needs are, you can acquire the tools that serve a purpose, and that's where you want to be. Each of these tools have different capabilities, some of them overlapping, some of them don't. So although it may give the impression that, there's a lot of tools in their portfolio, they each have a unique purpose and function. And our goal within IT is to help our users make informed decisions about the best tools to fit their needs.
Marseta, you mentioned a product roadmap. I imagined that is something that is on the, is that something that the FAA has had for some time, or is that something that's newer? This idea, as the tools have emerged, have they've changed? Do you have, okay, where are we today, and then where do we want to go? Or is it more of a roadmap related to what's, we'll use quotes, approved for our environment, or a little bit of both?
It's a little bit of both. Our product roadmap is more focused on being able to communicate the changes that we see coming down the pipeline and how those changes translate into new data services and new tools for our users. If you think about it, like a lot of agencies use an enterprise architecture that defines like your current and your future state. So our product roadmaps are very similar to that approach. And where we've seen that it adds a lot of value is it gives our users a chance to be able to see what's coming down the pipeline, and to be able to, react to that and to let us know, is our timing correctly? If they have a need, if we're going to deliver that in the first quarter of 2024 or the second quarter, does that align with their project timelines, and to allow us to sync those schedules up.
You opened the door for the product discussion a little bit, so we'll go there in a second to talk a little bit about emerging technologies and emerging needs, maybe a little AI, a little ML. My guest today is Marseta Dill, the Deputy Chief Data Officer for the Federal Aviation Administration. I'm Jason Miller, and you're listening to the discussion Government Modernization Unleashed, Data and AI, sponsored by EY on Federal News Network. Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Government Modernization Unleashed, Data and AI, sponsored by EY on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today is Marseta Dill, the Deputy Chief Data Officer for the Federal Aviation Administration. Now, Marseta, before break, we're talking a lot about some of your data strategy. We talked a little about predictive analytics and some of the tools that you were using. When you talk about tools, we got to jump into that artificial intelligence, machine learning. There's a lot of these emerging technologies and tools that people are getting very excited about when it comes to managing data, using data. where do you see what's happening today with the FAA, and where do you see you all going in the near future around these emerging technologies?
I mean, I think there's great opportunities both in the private and public sector when it comes to artificial intelligence, especially when you think about like access to big data. There's lots of opportunities to, automate tasks related to data. And it gives us a chance to really look at like some of the voids around just the prep aspect of it. How do we classify data? How do we look for anomalies? And with AI, I think in machine learning and natural language processing, it gives us more capabilities to take full advantage of the data that we have access, even historical data. And I think also, when we think about our decision support tools, how do we identify latent risk? How do we make, recommendations based on data that's coming from multiple data sources? And ultimately, we want to also think about ways to improve the way we engage in knowledge sharing. So we've seen a lot of applications in chatbots, for example, and that's one of the capabilities that we've taken advantage of. If you go to our community engagement site on FAA.gov, we typically get 300 inquiries per month with individuals, asking questions. And now through the use of a chatbot, we can turn those questions into an immediate response versus someone having to wait, let's say, 15 days to get a response back. So I think there's a lot of efficiencies and a lot of improvements to be made. And I think, there's more to come in this area as we, more to come in this area.
Thanks for sharing the chatbot example. I think that's a common thing I'm hearing across a lot of agencies. It's kind of the dipping that toe into a kind of the advanced use of AI. Early use was something like robotics process automation, which was, a lot of people say it's a dumb AI. Maybe that's not fair to say. But chatbots get a little smarter. Is that something that's probably done by the mission office, but is that something that your office played a role in? How did that come together? Just generally speaking, to launch this, because it's, as we've seen over the past, nothing's ever done kind of hopefully in a silo anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we work closely with our counterparts across the agency when they're deploying applications like this. You mentioned, RPA as an example. We have a strong partnership with our RPA team, and we recently just ran a campaign that was focused on leveraging, not only the tools that we offer within the Chief Data Office, but also, our RPA program office. And part of what what we accomplished with these campaigns is that people can have a broader view of the tools that are available as they're dealing with their unique challenges.
Sometimes it's just a matter of, I don't know what I don't know. Oh, I didn't realize I could use RPA, chatbot, you fill in the blank, to do this better and faster and easier. There's a concern that I've heard recently, and this kind of gets into the workforce conversation a little bit as well, because I think that's an important piece when we talk about AI and data. Do you get a sense that people are still uneasy with some of these tools and technologies, that they'll take their job? I thought that we've gotten past that, but I heard just recently from several feds that that's still a big concern they're hearing. I'm just wondering if you're hearing anything similar.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Like, I heard the same thing, when we mentioned the use of data. And my response to that comment is always that we have a lot of great talent within the agency. And a case in point is the person that I was talking to. She's developed a lot of the HR reports for the team that I worked for. We had an effort underway around succession planning and ensuring that we had a talent pipeline. And, you know, through that conversation with her, what I told her was that her contributions are not around those reports and being able to put that data together for us every week. Her value was being able to help us, you know, understand the training that's needed, being able to, you know, focus on, you know, where we have high concentrations of, let's say, level 3 program managers, and we really need to focus on making sure that we have level 1s and level 2s kind of coming down the pipeline. So I think there'll always be those concerns, but I think there's a plethora of work to do around our mission, and the goal is to make sure that we're using our energy in areas where we can have the best value, and making sure that we're not spending a lot of our time on those repetitive tasks that could, you know, benefit from automation, for example.
That's like the golden cup, right? The idea that, oh, I don't have to do this repetitive, boring task anymore, but I also have to get my head around the fact that, oh, I can do other things, which actually is a great segue to the training conversation. You have all this data, you have all these great tools you mentioned. Doesn't matter if those things don't matter if their workforce doesn't know how to use them, doesn't want to use them, is scared by them. So let's jump into the training conversation. How's the FAA kind of in your office addressing some of those big challenges around, hey, let's make sure the workforce is ready and empowered?
So we have a data dexterity program that we've been leading out of our CDO office. So I mentioned earlier our data science certificate program. We've also developed training roadmaps for data personas. So we have a training roadmap for a citizen data scientist. We have a training roadmap for data analyst. And the idea there is that we provide, you know, resources for individuals who, as part of their own, you know, professional goals, you know, want to upskill and want to take the time to gain new skills. We are also have a thriving user group around our products. So we have a Power BI user group, we have a Tableau user group, and they've built a community support system. So when individuals have challenges, we collaborate through teams, so they can put a note in a chat and say, I'm trying to develop, you know, an app related to this, like, can someone help me? Or I'm building a report around this data, you know, who's done this before? So that's another way that we're approaching training. We also have doctor hours where you can bring your problems and have a experienced user, you know, provide advice as well. And then the other project that I'm excited about is we're going to be standing up an advanced analytics center for enablement. So a lot of those advanced tools, when you were talking about AI and ML, we also want to build a community around that use as well. So, like I said, we have something for everybody, and our strategy is multifaceted.
I love the view of doctor's hours. You know what, it takes me right to Peanuts and Lucy. The doctor is in. Hope they charge 5 cents for you know, or maybe a cup of coffee or something. Because inflation has hit up. Marseta, why don't you just talk briefly about the Advanced Center for Analytics Enablement? Can you just talk a little bit more about what the vision is for that?
Yeah, so we used to have a business intelligence analytics community of practice. That group wasn't necessarily focused on use of a particular tool, but it was really around a community that was supporting our decision makers through reports, through other kind of products. And, as that group kind of evolved, what we realized was, we wanted to get our workforce also thinking about predictive and prescriptive analytics. So, that C4E is the group that we're hoping to kind of help with building out not only that skill set, but also bringing more awareness to the projects that are going on around the agency so that we can help share examples of where it's working and where it's having an impact. And we also see, opportunities for that group to kind of spearhead some of the innovation challenges that we've had in the past, where we invite, if you think about the show Shark Tank, where we invite employees to kind of share their ideas around innovative uses of data, and for those ideas to have an audience and for us to be able to say, I think there's some merit here. Like, let's give this team or this individual an opportunity to see, to see what they can do through a proof of concept of that idea.
And generally, are you hoping to stand this up this year in 2024 or sooner than later? Is there any timeline you can share?
Yeah, so we're definitely planning to kick it off again this year. We actually did some sessions last year around the C4E, just to gauge the interest. We hosted a 2-part What is AI series, which was phenomenal because it gave us a chance to take a step back and really educate our workforce on just the fundamentals. And I appreciated, all of the questions that were coming in. And I think we'll likely do a session similar to that this year. And what it also reminded me of is we oftentimes get caught up in kind of the latest and greatest technologies and applications, but I think what people really need is to understand, like, at the foundation of it, what is it? What value can it bring, so that it can allow them to make that translation between what they're doing today and what they might be doing tomorrow.
Marseta, that's a great place to end. We have much more to talk about, but I love what you said. Understand that value, make the translation from today to tomorrow. I think that's really what we're all trying to do, is help people understand a little more and be better at their jobs. Unfortunately, though, we are out of time for today. So let me thank my guest. Marseta Dill is the Deputy Chief Data Officer for the Federal Aviation Administration. Marseta, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the discussion Government Modernization Unleashed, Data and AI, sponsored by EY on Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search EY.